From MPB Think Radio, this is Now You're Talking, the award-winning show about the most interesting people and stories in Mississippi. I am your host, Marshall Ramsey, an editorial cartoonist committed to telling Mississippi's best stories. An award-winning educator, conservationist, and museum director, we are thrilled to close out Women's History Month with Angel Rohnke. She has served as a director of the Mississippi Museum of Natural Science since 2024 and has worked for the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks and the museum for 19 plus years. Rohnke's extensive expertise in conservation, education, tourism, and leadership have contributed to the growth of the museum and LeFleur's Bluff State Park. She served museum educator, education coordinator, assistant director, and deputy administrator. Angel, welcome. Thank you. It's very, very nice to see you, and I'm a big fan of where you work. I am a father of 3 boys. They're older now, but we spent many hours in the inside zoo, as we called it. It was always nice to go on a nice hot summer day and get to see wildlife and air conditioning. We always thought that was great. We go check out the big catfish, and that was fun, and the alligators, and go hike the trails and have a great time. And congratulations. Like I said, you've been on the job now for, about 3/4 of a year now, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's good to meet you. Thank you for taking the time to come in a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your early Mississippi days. How did you get interested in wildlife?
I grew up in upstate New York, so
really?
I spent my whole childhood outdoors. I mean, I'd be outside from sun up to sundown, and I grew up, everybody says New York, they think New York City, but
upstate's gorgeous.
Yeah, very similar to Mississippi, and so I just had a love for the outdoors, growing up on the Erie Canal, going fishing with my dad, and in the wintertime, it would freeze over and we'd go ice skating, or we'd go snowshoeing, and so just...
We don't do that here.
Right. And so we just had a lot of really great experiences growing up with my family and being a child and loving the outdoors. So I pursued a career in the outdoors. And so I went on and pursued a natural resource conservation degree and went on to eventually get a master's degree in environmental interpretation, which is education in a non-formal setting. And so I finished the degree. At that time, met my husband, who's from upstate New York also. And we said, wherever we get a job, that's where we're going. And we finished our degrees, and he said, I got a job offer in Mississippi.
Really?
And
what did he get a job in?
Wildlife biology.
Okay.
Yeah, he works for Mississippi State. And so when he said Mississippi, I was like, seriously? And so they flew us down, and of course it was spring and tornadoes. And
oh, yeah, there's nothing like a good tornado to make you say, welcome.
Land of the Oz.
That's right.
And, so I found the museum, and I said, the only way I'm moving to Mississippi is if I get a job at that museum.
Really?
And so
you called your shot.
Yeah. So just absolutely incredible. So I was hired on as an educator there and taught programs, and my supervisor had retired, and I took on as the education coordinator, oversaw all the education programs. And then in 2012, took on the assistant director role, where overseeing the whole museum. So, so many people think there's just the public side of the museum, but we actually house all the specimens for the state of Mississippi. We have a research facility, and so taking on all of that, we have about 60 staff now, so overseeing all of that. And then in 2021, took on that deputy administrator role for Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, and created the internship program for Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, and kind of creating that great pipeline for our agency with the universities. And obviously, the LeFleur's Bluff Playground was, built during a pandemic, and so just absolutely amazing. Welcomed about 400,000 people since we've opened, and so it's just been an amazing career.
Well, as a melanoma survivor, I have to say I love the shade. The shade on it's fantastic. But when they built that, I was just like, I wish my kids were young. And I asked my wife, I said, "Do you want to start having more kids?" And she said, "No." And so I look so. Maybe I have grandkids. That when I have grandkids, we can do that. Let me talk a little bit about the new. I'm just curious. Is the Erie Canal as cool as I think it was? Because I was totally obsessed with that as a kid. So I always thought that was really neat that they built that back with the technology that they had back during the time.
And they do all kinds of tours. You can take a boat tour, and I would love to do that when I retire one day. Go back.
Do boat tours?
Yeah, on the Erie Canal. You're sleeping on the boat on the Erie Canal.
Oh, that's really cool. On that, let me ask you one more New York questions. Because I remember when I was up in Vermont and New Hampshire and stuff like that, they just did not have the poisonous snakes like we have here.
No.
Yeah, so that was like when you came down here, did you like have to like pull out your snake guide?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, between
that and the alligators,
the gnats, the fire ants. Yeah,
the fire ants are friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
And then the humidity.
And the humidity.
Every year I'm like, how are we still here?
And the tornadoes.
Yeah, we were supposed to be here on a 2-year plan, and as you see, it's been 20. So.
Okay, well, if it makes you feel better, I came in on the 2-year plan too, and I've been here 28. So it's like the Hotel California. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave.
Right.
But that said, it's worth it, and especially for what you do for a living, because I think here in Mississippi, of all the places I've lived, and I mean, Texas was pretty close, but honestly, we care about the outdoors here probably more than any place I've been. And I know, so that's really cool for you as an educator to have a whole generation that's been out probably with their grandfather or been out with their dad, and they've been out, or their family out in the wild, and they're interested in it, and they're engaged and they're passionate.
Yeah, and that's a big campaign where starting this year, I have 2 boys myself, and so electronics and phones, and
Huge.
As a family, you're fighting that battle of getting kids outdoors, and we know all the benefits of well-being, getting outdoors, and just not only physically but mentally, and so just connecting families back together again. Put the electronics down and connecting with nature, and so that'll be a big thing over the next year. We're celebrating 25 years at LeFleur's Bluff, coming up on 100 years in 7 years for the museum. So just connecting children and families to the outdoors.
Yeah, I was gonna say that about the 100 years. I was number one and we'll talk about the reason why the whole museum exists in the first place, which is I think we have a special guest that will probably tell us some about that. But honestly, it's hard to believe that we were that advanced during the Great Depression to be able to do that sort of thing. It's wonderful. The 25 years part, though. Gosh, because I remember when they built it, and it seems like that was like 3 years ago.
Yeah,
So.
Yeah, I moved to LeFleur's Bluff in 2000, and so we're celebrating 25 years.
Yeah, and then the Children's Museum came a few years after that, so that whole area has just really blossomed. You got the museum trail, so you got a lot of good things going on in that area.
Yeah, I'm the president of the LeFleur's Museum District, and so that's our 4
nice.
Museums there. So the Children's Museum, the Ag Museum, Sports Hall of Fame, and we've worked together for years. 15 years we've been talking about this pedestrian bridge to connect us all,
Yes.
and so that's going to happen next July across Lakeland. That'll connect all, and I mean, that's the busiest intersection of the state. Like, it is such a tourist, destination. So just so proud of all the museums there, and just such a great partnership. And it's just like anywhere else in the country, that you can go. Like, you go to New Orleans, you can go to the aquarium, you can go to the zoo. And so it's just so great to have that here. It's such a gem in Jackson.
It definitely is. And like, I joked about having more kids on that, but I mean, my kids used to love, to go to that area. Clay Hayes, I'll throw Clay's, Clay's out. I run with him, but he took us out and let us run the museum trail and everything like that. And it was just what a wonderful asset to Jackson and so forth. And so that's great. You fell in love here. And I love the whole concept of getting kids to put down their screens. And good luck with that.
Yep.
How are you going to do it? Dynamite? No,
I fight with mine every night.
I know. I've got 3 boys too. I know how this thing rolls on this.
I see you in my feed with your therapy walks. You love those therapy walks.
I
those
do.
Sunsets, and I think that my kids, they seeing the sunsets and getting out there and seeing the sunrise, and just seeing the stars and going camping. And
of course, the irony of that is I have my phone with me
right.
when I take those
order
pictures.
To do that.
Right.
When I take those pictures, but yes, no, that hour every morning is wonderful on that, and that's the beauty of Mississippi, is that we have that nature. I see deer, I see skunks, which I try not to see them too closely, but there's all kinds of animals, and there's beautiful things to see here too. A little bit. Talk a little bit about with some of the challenges, everything you've gotten a bunch of awards too in your career, on your resume. Tell a little bit about the education honors that you've received, because you've had some really nice honors.
Most recently, I was named the Museum Professional of the Southeast, and so I'm really proud of that.
Okay. Can I get you to sign this piece of paper
Sure.
before you leave? That's really cool. I want your autograph. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So what were some of the things they were looking for when they named you that?
They obviously the partnerships, with like the LeFleur's Museum District, that partnership, and those large projects like the LeFleur's Bluff Playground. That was the largest ask ever received from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi Foundation, $4.2 million. So we were so grateful for that. So that was a big part of that award. Just partnerships. Connecting to underserved communities, and so a lot of that went into that award, nomination.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. I tell you what, why don't we take our first break? We'll go ahead and do that, and when we return, we're going to be back with Angel as well as another very special guest. You've been hearing her voice a little bit off and on. This is Now You're Talking right here on MPB Think Radio.
Hello, I'm Desiree Frazier, host of the award-winning news program, Mississippi Edition. We bring you conversations about the latest news from across the Magnolia State. Whether it's politics, healthcare, or education, you'll hear in-depth discussions on issues that matter to you. So join us each weekday morning at 8:30 on MPB Think Radio, or download the podcast, listen through the app, and online.
On the original Southern Remedy, your health is our main concern. I'm Dr. Jimmy Stewart, Professor of Internal Medicine and Pediatrics at the University of Mississippi Medical Center, ready to answer your medical questions.
I sleep with a CPAP, and I just been using regular tap water. Is that not a good thing?
I'm 78 years old, and I have hot flashes that are horrible.
The original Southern Remedy has the answers to your questions every Wednesday morning at 11 on MPB Think Radio.
Together through the years, together in the future. MPB, your stories, our mission.
You're listening to Now You're Talking on MPB Think Radio. I'm your host, Marshall Ramsey, and we're back with Angel Rohnke as the director of the Mississippi Museum of Natural Science. Angel, thank you. Like I said, you came from upstate New York. You came down to the South. I'm from Atlanta originally. I moved from San Diego. For the first 6 months, I kept walking into automatic opening doors because they open slower here a little bit. How long did it take you to kind of adjust your pace a little bit to living?
It took me a while. Everyone kept saying, like, you need to slow down, just slow down. And I was thinking that on the way in this morning, where I was like, it has been so nice to just slow down. And Mississippi, just family being first, very family oriented, the hospitality. I'm like, why are all these people talking to me in the grocery store? And when we go back home to visit, it's like
they talk to you and they're about to roll you.
They don't talk to you. Yeah,
they're about to hit you over the head.
Yeah, so it definitely took me a little bit, but so grateful for it. It's just the way of living it's great.
So you've gotten to travel around the state a little bit. What are some of your favorite things and wildlife, wild places you've seen around the state?
I love Roosevelt State Park.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. The lake is so beautiful.
And it's so close.
Yeah.
So it's an easy weekend trip to take the kids, or we take our Boy Scout group. And I would have to say my favorite would be Tishomingo State Park. I just love Tishomingo. It's beautiful.
It is absolutely gorgeous on that. Okay, so you brought along a special guest who has a really cool hat to tell us a thing or two about the museum's history. Fanny is here. Fanny, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Thank you. You bring with you a lot of history.
A 130-year history.
That's fantastic. You don't look a day over 100. So
Thank you.
I'm just
Thank
kidding.
you.
No, that was an insult. I don't mean that. A day over 20. How about that? Tell us a little bit about it, because like I said, you do a lot of history with the kids. You do a lot of talking and telling about what's going on.
Right. I portray Fannie Cook.
Yes.
As she was the founder of basically the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. She's the one who spearheaded the creation of that and was the first biologist with the agency and was also the first director of the Science Museum, which was called the Mississippi Wildlife Museum at the time.
Wasn't she with the Smithsonian, too, at one point?
She worked there some.
She did. So she kind of brought that standard back to Mississippi.
Right. That's
with
where
her.
she learned what could be done and what needed to be done in Mississippi. Was while she was in Washington. She was going to George Washington University and studying ornithology.
Oh, nice.
And so she had started out in biology, in history and English, but just got this more interest, I guess, in biology and started working on a degree in ornithology and worked at the Smithsonian for a while and came back to Mississippi. And I guess the lights came on with what she saw going on in Mississippi with the market hunting and fires and everything that was happening. She said, we've got to protect this.
Because I was just thinking during the 30s, there probably was a lot of logging down in the Piney Woods and some of that area too.
Right,
so.
Yeah. There was a lot going on. And we had no Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks or Game and Fish at the time. And so she said, this is what we need. We were the last state in the country. This was prior to, of course, Arizona and Alaska and so forth. But so she spearheaded the effort and basically did it not by herself, but she was the spearhead that got everybody organized to support the idea. She took it to the legislature. Her brother at the time was a representative, and so they wrote up legislation, took it to the legislature, and got darn close to getting it passed. And it didn't pass, and she just said, I just didn't have any idea that it would be so hard because it's such a great idea. So, welcome to the legislature.
I bet she was, I would just only imagine her walking into the legislature in the 30s. She had to be a force in nature. And I know it helped to have her brother, but
it
gosh.
did. And Fannie was, the more I learned about her and reading some of her letters, she was not necessarily the face of this. She was the one that was back here saying, Can you reach so-and-so? You know so-and-so. Can you talk to so-and-so? She wasn't necessarily the person who was out there pushing it. She was the executive secretary for the organization that was pushing this forward. And she was the one continuing to make sure things happen.
That's that's worthy of a leadership book, though.
Absolutely. The more I learned, I thought she's learned how to make things happen without necessarily having to take all the glory or whatever.
I think it was Ronald Reagan that said something like that. You can get anything done you want as long as you let somebody else get the credit.
Right. And she was all about it. It took her 6 years of doing that to get the legislation passed. And as you mentioned earlier, it was in 1932, in the middle of the Depression, when they were cutting back on resources.
When people were eating clay at that point.
And we're going to start a Game and Fish Commission.
It's interesting because I had somebody on the show talking a little bit about the Pascagoula River and the wildlife area too, and some of the challenges that his dad had getting that area turned into a wildlife area and so forth. And sometimes it is hard to compete when there's a lot of dollars to be made. Right. But what a gift she gave us.
Right, absolutely. And that was just her passion and her desire was once that was created to see it do what needed to be done, that it passed the legislation that in the laws that permitted the protection of animals and the reintroduction of animals, and that did the education part, the museum and the education programs. She wanted to do it all.
Now, where was the very first museum? Because I remember there used to be one downtown.
Right. The very first one was in the old asylum grounds on North State Street.
Really?
Yeah, it was a rundown,
the old building,
building.
Oh, no, it looked like something out of a Stephen King movie.
Well, they were there for several years, and she finally got a facility in front of where you probably remember the museum, right on Jefferson Street. There was a building in front of that was owned by the Fair Commission.
I'm sure many of our listeners went on many of school field trips to that building.
And then in 71, I believe, the building that you remember on Jefferson Jefferson Street
right.
was built.
Yeah, that one, and then of course the new building,
Right,
which
and then the new building.
fantastic, a fantastic
Right.
facility.
And that was, and Fanny had that image of this museum in 1932.
yeah.
She wanted a staff. She wanted education programs. She wanted aquariums. She wanted all of these things that she had the vision
Right.
then.
So when you pass something like that, and then you wake up one morning and like, oh, now I got to go out and get samples. How do you start? You just like, oh, well, I just hit a bird there. I'll pick that up and put it in the trunk, and then we'll go. But I mean, you kind of work your. How did they even have an idea of what species were in Mississippi at that point?
Well, they didn't.
That's what I'm
I mean,
saying.
that was the whole
Yeah.
point. When she started her schooling at George Washington, her first assignment basically was to find the history of scientific reports in Mississippi, and she found two. One from 1854 and the other one from 1921, I think.
Wow.
And so she was like,
Yeah.
you know, that was another thing that the light bulb came on and said, we don't know what we've got, and we're going to lose it if we don't do something to change that.
Yeah, I think some of the oldest thing, the only older things I've seen is like some of Audubon came through and did some drawings
right.
and did some paintings and so forth. But I
Right.
just like, wow, that's that's Herculean right there, to be honest with you, to have
Yeah.
that task. But obviously it's one she was up for.
Well, and you're talking about the collecting and where do you start? That was another fortuitous thing is the WPA came in and said, do you have a program that can put people to work? We've got money, but we need to put people to work. And she's like, oh, yeah, I know what we can do. And so she had collectors who went out and collected, and people who did exhibits, and people who wrote papers, and people who did pictures, and people who did education. So she had a whole team out there for several years and creating museums throughout the state.
Yeah.
So
So when she created museums around the state, tell us a little bit about that. They have
most of those were with colleges or junior colleges.
Okay.
Because when she had to apply for the grant, WPA grant, she went to the colleges and universities and said, I need partners. I don't know everything. You know, I'm just getting started, but, you know, I need your help, and will you be part of this and help me get a museum started and help me with identifications and that sort of thing.
Okay,
So,
I really am like totally her biggest fan because she actually could say, I don't understand
Yeah.
everything.
Oh, yeah.
That takes a lot to do that.
Oh, yeah.
I've never been able to do that. You can ask my wife. There's a lot of truth on that one. But like I said, to do that, and how long did she, before she retired?
She got a job the summer, the agency was created in 1932. She got a job. She got a job in September. She had wanted to be research coordinator,
Okay.
but they gave her the research assistant job. Now, she was assistant to nobody, but that was her title, was research assistant.
Well, that was rude.
Well, I think so. And I believe it was 67.
67.
So she was there 26 years, I believe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so she was there, and then continued to write papers, and continued to lead field trips, and continued to be involved and work with Boy Scouts and education programs.
Oh, I would have given anything to have just to be able to sit down and just talk to her, or just have her give a tour, you know, and on that, just to let all that knowledge spill out on that. But that's what you do now, right?
Well, I try to, because, you know, so many people don't know about Miss Cook. Although the museum is the Fannie A. Cook Memorial,
Yeah.
people that doesn't register. And now we have a book about her, and I portrayed her just as another way to get people's attention. People learn different ways. I'm sure you know that.
Yes. As I
through
draw
cartoons,
pictures for a living.
right? But they learn through reading, or they learn through watching a presentation or hearing something. So my presentation about Fanny was just another way to pique people's interest in Fanny.
That's incredible. What was you know, just trying to think about what the wildlife was back then. You know, there probably were actually panthers in the state back then. I don't know. You know, they always.
But there were like six bears.
There were a lot of bears. There were
No,
six.
there were six.
There were six. Okay, and did they swim over from Louisiana?
Probably.
Probably for
They
the
very
day.
well
Yeah.
may have. But one of the last places, Hooker's Ridge, which is just north of Vicksburg, that was one of the last places that they had cubs back during that time period. And there were still bear sign there in the 70s. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
See, I've always been a fan of Teddy Roosevelt, and so I always loved that. And I was watching a show last night, and they actually were talking about how he got like one of the last films of passenger pigeons, stuff like that. But I mean, it's just so incredibly important for this type of research and stuff, just so we know our past and what we have today.
Right. Well, that's in the museum, of course, that's Angel, but
Yeah.
they're continuing to keep up with what's going on out there. I mean, Fanny sort of did some of the groundwork. This is what we've got, and now the museum is saying, is it still there? Is it still healthy? Is it
Right.
that they're basing their information today from what Ms. Cook did?
Yeah, Angel, that's the big thing about the museum. And one of the things I always loved, it was more than just an exhibit. It's a living and breathing research facility on top of being a museum. So, I mean, kids, when they can see it, they can enjoy going. I like the fish tanks and the alligators myself. That's always a big fan of that. But you have the classrooms, you have the behind the scenes research and so forth. And then they can even go outside and you've got 300 acres that they can wander through on the trails and go see, an alligator in person if they're lucky or unlucky, depending on how close they get. But I just, like I said, I always enjoyed it when I took my kids there, just for that same reason. And I remember reading about Fanny and everything else, and I just kept thinking, I would have loved to have met her. Yeah, but I get to meet you here today.
Yeah, so. Well, I do the best I can.
I think that's
do
very
my
good.
Interpretation the best I can.
So, is there anything else a little bit about the museum that we need to? That she did or so forth. Because like I said, that vision that she had, and it finally was created in 2000.
Right. But I often, people will ask me, what would she think of the museum today? And I said, and I think about her and I go, she'd say, oh, it's wonderful. But you could probably also do X, Y, Z. I think she was always thinking of, how can you do this? How can you do that better? I think she would be tickled to death that so much of her vision has come to fruition, but I bet she knows something else that she wants done.
Well, Angel, are you like that?
Yeah, yeah.
She's positive. No,
I'm always, the staff are like, oh, what idea does she have now, or how can we make this better? And so, just continue carrying on her legacy. And so you had talked about the research collections, that's not open to the public every day. And so we open it once a year right now for our annual Nature Fest, which is next Saturday.
Oh,
and
nice.
So you can go behind the scenes. But we're also talking about maybe adding, when you get your admission ticket, you can add on a behind the scenes tour. So we're talking about doing that. We've not done that. And so just making people aware that there's much more to the museum than just the aquariums and exhibits. We are literally up to 2 million specimens now behind the scenes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And what does that include,
Fish
and fauna and so forth? Okay,
snakes
so everything.
And plants and everything. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So if you had 2 million snakes, that'd be really, really terrifying, to be honest with you.
Majority of it is the fish. That's the largest part of the collection. But so, we're just continuing her legacy and, continue just to connect, universities and students. We have colleges come and do behind the scenes tours with us all the time for their, classes. And so that's really fun. And then just families just love it. It's just fun. Even member nights, we just did, there was a large mammoth tusk found. And so we did a members only night and they got to come behind the scenes.
I've read about, where was that found?
In Madison.
In Madison.
Yeah.
So somebody was just cutting their grass and no, I'm just kidding. I didn't know if it's in suburbs.
We're just trying to, have these member only parties and, just when things come up like that are really cool and, spur of the moment kind of pop up, events and stuff.
Oh, it helps people feel engaged and part of I've seen behind the scenes on that a little bit. You've been blessed with just great volunteers and great people throughout the years. Who are some other people that have made a mark on the museum?
Libby Hartfield, so she was incredible. Obviously, me moving here, and I lost my mom at a young age, and so she really supported me in my career, and she was amazing. She just helped me, and obviously supported me in everything that I've done. And I still talk with her, so she's always like, yeah, you should do this, and so it's really great. So it's Fanny living through Libby and. And so it's really great. Libby, for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I just want to let you know that I have built half of that museum through your gift shop with my boys. We always came home with the tax, but it was always fun. It was always the coolest stuff in your gift shop too. I always have a lot of fun with that. why is the education specifically about the founding and the history museum, Fanny, why is that so important for kids to be able? And like I said, you mentioned that oral tradition of being able to, obviously it goes all the way back to what we learned in Sunday school, but that oral tradition is so important. But why is it important for kids to understand that history in the founding of the museum and how it all came to be?
Well, for one thing, it was a woman.
That's right, and this is Women's History Month.
This is Women's History Month.
But that was big time for the 30s.
Yes.
And I mean, even,
they barely had the right to vote.
That's right. Yeah, no, it's incredible.
I'm not sure whether they could serve on a jury yet, but so there, it lets people know that even then, if you had a desire and wanted to do something, you could achieve that goal if you had that vision. And she had a lot of support, no doubt. Her family, she was one of 10 children. She had a lot of support from her mom and her dad and her brothers and sisters and friends.
Well, that explains everything. If she had 9 siblings,
that does not help. They vote.
What you generally learn how to get things done.
How to get things. She was right in the middle, so she learned from both ends, I guess. But I think sometimes we take things for granted.
Yeah.
That things have always been this way, and they haven't. I mean, I know. I've seen the changes that have happened, but people coming into Mississippi might think, that river's always looked like that.
Yeah.
No, it's not always looked like that. You've forgotten what had to be done to create that river, or why that river now is not what it should be, because we've seen that change. But when people just have one blip, it's always been like that. We've always had forest. No, we haven't always had forest.
There's quite a bit of clear cuttings, I would imagine.
There were a lot of clear cuttings during the time. We built a lot of Chicago. So, I think it's important. That's where a lot of the wood went, was to build Chicago.
Our population went to Chicago in 27, and then the wood went right behind it. That. But speaking of lakes, we mentioned that. I know the One Lake project is going to come on. That's going to kind of affect probably the lower end of your trails, I was just trying to think.
I think the current layout, it should not affect.
So
not
it's
like
not as
old,
high as the old
no.
Two Lakes was. I was kind of curious about that. Folks, I got to tell you seriously, if you get a chance, stop by and go, because number one, it's not expensive, but number two, and we'll talk about the costs and everything in the next segment, but it is just really a great way to spend an afternoon, especially in the springtime when it's absolutely gorgeous too. It's beautiful. And getting back in those woods is so beautiful, but like I said, my 17-year-old's taking zoology in high school right now and loves it. So I was like, I think I'm going to bring him by.
Definitely have to do it behind the scenes.
I think he would enjoy that as well. I tell you what, why don't we take our last break, and when we come back, we'll talk with Angel and Fanny a little bit more. This is Now You're Talking on MPB Think Radio.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bobby Rush. As a blues man, I love Mississippi Public Broadcasting. If you support Mississippi music and their local programming, donate now, right now, and become a member today, not tomorrow. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Doesn't matter how big or small, but we prefer big. Thank you very much.
Dr. Susan Buttress asks the hard questions on Southern Remedy, Relatively Speaking.
Can you forgive anyone, anytime, for anything? Do we know how to have a healthy relationship? Have you heard this statement, who am I to judge? Have we taken a hard look at what we're doing as adults? Are you feeling happy?
Find out our answers to these questions by listening to the Southern Remedy, Relatively Speaking podcasts, or listen live Tuesdays at 11 on MPB Think Radio.
The Measuring Show.
Since 1970, MPB has been enriching the lives of Mississippians.
Everything we do gives us the chance to grow and learn.
With your support, we are always there whenever and wherever you need us. Together through the years, together in the future. Please consider making a donation at mpbfoundation.org. MPB, your stories, our mission.
You're listening to Now You're Talking on MPB Think Radio. I'm your host, Marshall Ramsey, and we're back with Angel Rohnke. Angel, I got to tell you, we were talking during the break, and we're going to bring this up. You once taught me restorative yoga, and it restored me so much I fell asleep and I snored.
Yes, you did.
I did, so that was good. I'm glad that you decided to bring that up so that we could bring that here. But anyway, that was fun. You did a great job up until the point I passed out. So it was because I was in a very difficult yogic move, and I just passed out from blood loss in my head. That's what it had to be. Either that or it was very relaxing and I fell asleep. You got a lot of upcoming things that are coming up and things you were talking about a little bit before. And so I love the fact that you do engage the students and you do engage the guests and you engage the parents too. And I think sometimes when you go do a place with kids and you just feel like you turn your brain off and you put it in a locker and you turn the key and so forth. But this one, I think the parents get as much out of this as the others. Fanny, do you ever do that? Do you ever see that? Do the parents ask you great questions also?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Occasionally they will ask. Yeah, they're kind of... sometimes they don't know if I'm real or not.
Oh, really?
I've had people think that I was Fanny. Yeah.
Wow.
Because they're not listening completely.
Or good at math.
Yeah, they're good at math.
Yeah.
But they're listening and they're getting the story. They're getting the information.
They're getting the story though. But you do a very convincing Fanny. I mean, you're doing a good job with that, Sarah. Right. I mean, I completely bought into it until I did the math and I realized, well, that's not possible.
That can't work.
But no, that's great because I was like, she retired the year I was born, and I know how old I am. Yeah, so that's a couple of years ago. Angel, seriously, I would think you have one of the coolest jobs in the world.
It definitely is a dream come true. I would never in my life have imagined to move to Mississippi and have all of, the different career paths that I've had and to become the director. Truly just full circle. Just absolutely amazing. Just
kind of going through your basic LinkedIn resume and everything and how it's just neat when you look backwards. It's like everything seemed to lead to this moment. Mm-hmm. What were some of the things you did building up to it that you feel like you use every single day?
I would say, obviously, a lot of self-care. I built that in at an early age. Like I told you, I lost my mom early, so I had actually found yoga when I was in my 20s. And so when I came to Mississippi, I partnered with like McLean Fletcher Center for children that had lost a primary parent, and so kind of connecting them not only to yoga but to the outdoors. And just so self-care and just being authentic, being yourself. You're going to deal with lots of chaos. There's always something crazy, and just continue to focus on your goals and what is the long-term goal? Like, don't get caught up in the chaos and just stay focused.
I number one, yoga and trauma are very good for each other. It really does help reduce trauma in kids. I could see why that would work out really well. Number two. Speaking of trauma, and I was just thinking about that, you mentioned the pandemic earlier, and all the museums that I've talked to, the people that have run museums, everything, are like, oh yeah, we were in the fetal position for at least 2 or 3 weeks, and then we say, okay, what kind of online programming can we figure out and everything? What was that like during that time?
March 17th, we shut down completely, and we went home until June 22nd. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was rough. Obviously, we got very creative with social media and
you had one person to feed the animals, I hope.
Oh, every day there was someone there to feed the animals.
Okay, just checking.
But we designed the playground. We went home and we were like designing the playground from the ground up, picking every color. Like you had mentioned, the shade. Like there was 2 moms, so it was Emily Hoff from the Children's Museum and myself, and we planned it, the fencing around the outside, the benches, so you could definitely tell 2 moms had planned this. And so, it was awful, but it was such a positive thing for, everybody to focus on. They would see it being built and it's just constantly negativity. And that was kind of the beacon of the community of seeing it being built. And, the day the playground opened, I remember looking at the news and it was like house fire, something else, LeFleur's Bluff Playground. And I was like, yes, So just continue to focus on the positive.
That was great because I remember when it was being built, and it was just so nice to see that going. You get quite a traffic count that comes by between Lakeland Drive and between 55. You get a lot of cars come by. So when you were seeing that come, you got a new entrance to the park too, which I thought was kind of cool. See, I noticed these things. Did they finally finish Riverside Drive?
Yes.
Oh,
mm-hmm.
wow.
Yep.
Okay, that took longer than the pyramids. Yeah. But they got it done. That's important.
Yes.
So it used to be fun to drive down Riverside too fast, and you could Evel Knievel, you could fly into the air and stuff like that. So it was fun. But that's great too. You mentioned you've got some events coming up. Go ahead and
So April 5th is Nature Fest. So that's just like a really fun spring day. Come out, we'll have a climbing wall, we'll have live animals, behind the scenes tours. April 11th, we're doing our first museum trivia night. So it'll be trivia, but all focused around natural science. So we're real excited about that.
I may bring on my son on that one.
Yeah, you should.
That trivia night. That'd be great.
And then April 25th, we have Moonlight, Meteors, and Music. So we're partnered with the symphony. This will be our third year doing it. And so out in the den, out in the park. And so it's really fun. Just a great evening with telescopes. And it's just fun. Our biologists are out there and the symphony's playing. And we're just really trying to stay relevant, being an older museum and just staying relevant in the times of what people want. And so we're just trying to, stay ahead of the game.
Do you find yourself having people walk up to you and saying, I used to come here as a child?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and we're focusing a lot on that this year with the 25th anniversary at LeFleur's, as, then and now, like sharing their stories about, where they are now and, pictures from when they came to visit or sit on the frog and take their picture.
So you're see, the thing is, you're hurting my feelings a little bit when you're saying that 2000 was 25 years ago, because I think it was really about 5 years ago, wasn't it?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that sounds like, on that. So that's great. I love the programming, though. I love some of the things that you're doing on that.
Thank you.
So the state of Mississippi's wildlife today. I mean, number one, there are plenty of deer. I can tell you that, just because I drive a lot, and they like grass on the side of the highway, and they think their version of a god has two bright shiny eyes and makes a rumbling noise because they want to see him all the time. I mean, are there other species that are doing really well in Mississippi? I mean, what's kind of the state of things?
I think things are going very well. I mean, you want to talk about the black bear?
Well, we've certainly had a turnaround for the black bear.
Yeah, so you don't have 6.
So it went from 6 to I'm not even sure how many now, but there was a time in Mississippi after
just over
Fanny. Well, habitat change and overhunting, both because bears have a long, it's 2-year cycle for bears, cubs, and so they don't replace themselves well. And bears, cub survival can be kind of hard. Yeah. So when you get a small population, it's hard to get them built back up again. But, at the time, even if we did get a bear in Mississippi, as you said, they came across the river, then we need to take them back where they came from. My opinion is they came here. They must have wanted to be here, so let's leave them. So it's been an education process.
They're like Angel and I. They came here, they liked it, and they stuck around.
And they stayed. And if you don't shoot them, they'll stay. So, it was an education process of, these bears are here. This is what they're looking for. This is how you act around them. This is what you do.
Yeah.
And we've now got a fairly good population out there that's coming back.
Yeah,
because education was a big part of that.
Okay, so let's just throw that out there. If somebody does encounter a bear, what do they do?
We have a black bear Facebook page from the agency, and it has a huge following.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. What, people taking pictures and posting, or where they see them and things like that?
Yeah.
So it's amazing. Like my family's from East Tennessee, so my dad, when in the 50s, would literally dress up in overalls and would stand next to bears and get his picture taken with that. That was his thing.
That's not in that
No, that's not. Well, that's the thing. You don't want to do that. You don't, because they were pretty tame back then because they were hand fed so much. Right. But now, my son's in Gatlinburg 2 weeks ago, and he sees one. He's playing putt-putt, and there's one like sitting there hanging in the tree in downtown. That's not good either.
No, that's too many.
But when you see one, and particularly, what always get me with tourists, they would see like a mama mama, and then they'd see 2 cubs, and then they go run up to them and take pictures. That's not smart either.
No, in Yellowstone they do the same thing with bison. That's
Oh
not
yeah,
a
don't
good
pet the
idea.
fuzzy.
Don't. That's not good. Leave them back off. Leave alone. Usually you can just back off.
Okay.
I mean,
So bears generally will be a little bit cautious of you too.
Every instance is different.
Right.
But basically, if you can just back off, don't look threatening. If they do start charging you, yes, maybe you should look big and make noise and so forth. But just be aware of where you are and know whether your likelihood of encountering a bear is even possible.
Yeah, like
so that that you are prepared, that you're making noise as you go through the woods or something.
Oh,
Not trying to sneak up on something.
And look for bear scat.
And look for bear scat and tracks
and tracks
hair
and little
whatever.
obvious signs. Yeah, that would be
obvious
important on that. Bear, I guess, would be one. I was trying to think. Coyotes you generally want to, but they're pretty wary of you too. They don't want to hang out.
Don't worry too much about them.
I'm just trying to think of snakes, obviously. Now, I'm not really scared of snakes. If one got in our house and I had to stop my wife from burning it down. So, there are obviously there's a big wide range of people's fears on snakes. But once again, it's really nice to come to the museum because you learn what's poisonous, what's not poisonous, and a little education goes a long way to not only help save you, but also save the animal too.
Right.
Yeah, because you don't need to kill every snake.
No.
Just 99% of them, right? No, wait, you're not supposed to answer that. So, no, I'm a big fan of snakes as well. They're good friends. Obviously, you mentioned the Facebook page. I know Wildlife Fisheries. I mean, they're out busy all around the state and put out some great content and a lot of research a little bit. But where are some places? Obviously, number one, come to the museum. That would be rule number one. Number two, I know there's some good online sources too.
Yeah, yeah. So MDWFP.com/museum. And then we also have our foundation for the museum, so the MMNSfoundation.org, that supports the legacy of Fanny Cook. And
yes.
So, and all of our state parks are going under renovations. So they're redoing cabins and they're doing some beautiful renovations. They just opened at Roosevelt. So there's just all kinds of things happening across the state for wildlife, fisheries, and parks.
Yeah, folks, if you've never been to one of our state parks, they really are a jewel in this state. Definitely on that. And of course, if you want to donate to the museum, you can do that too. And that's important as well, right?
Yes. Yep. And so that's so the MMNSfoundation.org is our foundation's website to make a donation to support the museum.
Yeah, and I think just, if you got a weekend or if you got a day, just come down and do a day trip and come down and come visit. The museum's nice. It's beautiful. You got the playground. You got a lot of you got the children's museums nearby if you want to make it a twofer for the day. How long do you think it takes just the average person to get through the museum?
You should give yourself at least a couple of hours. I mean, some people just zip through in an hour, but 2 hours is really, but a lot of people do. I mean, in school groups do that. They'll come in the morning and be with us for a couple hours, go to the playground, we have a new concession stand. I don't know if you saw that, but it's called Spider Snack Shack. And,
nice.
So they have lunch there, and then they head over to the Children's Museum after they leave the playground. And so it's just a really great day. And, as you drive by any Saturday, there'll be 1,000 people out there.
Yes.
So
that's great. And, like I said, I kind of got, I started looking at every fish, and then I started looking at every animal exhibit, and then y'all would bring in dinosaurs and so forth like that, the animatronic dinosaurs. And I really started, and I realized that maybe I was bringing my kids. I didn't know how much they were enjoying it, but I was having such a great time. I didn't care. So that
we love bringing in those traveling exhibits because that brings back those repeat visitors. And so right now we have Mind Bender Mansion, so it's like a lot of brain teasers, very interactive exhibit.
Oh, nice!
People are loving that. This summer we'll be getting Backyard Adventures, which talks about outdoor play, the importance of well-being, and your physical being outdoors. So it'll be a really great exhibit.
Oh, cool. Well, if you ever need any cartoon characters, putting down the screens, I would be glad to jump in and help you on that one because I'm kind of there with you. I need to start putting it down myself. Is there anything that I have forgotten today?
I don't think so.
We appreciate you letting us
tell
you about the
This has been wonderful. It's been the history of the museum is fascinating, and of course, the legacy of Fanny Cook. I'm seriously going to get the book and read it because it sounds like there's a real leadership lesson in the way that she was able to pull this off at a time when women, like you said, barely had the right to even vote, and she was able to like I said, she didn't need the credit, but
No.
she had the goal.
Yes.
And so she got it done.
And she got it done.
And every day now, thousands of kids get to literally
Mm-hmm.
learn and love Mississippi's wildlife because of what she did. It's pretty
Mm-hmm.
awesome. So, Angel, thank you. I'm glad that you've made Mississippi home. And you and I can talk about it. Like I said, I'm from Atlanta originally, so I'm not from upstate New York. But that said, I do realize that, like the first time I ever spoke in Mississippi, I spoke to a literary group, and I said, I hope you guys are having a good day. And it was just like everybody's looking at me like, you ain't from around here, are you? And I was like, don't use you guys anymore. So never mind. But because when you're from Atlanta, you might as well be from upstate New York. It's very similar. So, but it's great. Thank you so much for being on the show today. And this has been wonderful. I've really enjoyed getting to visit with both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Hey, thank you for listening. And special thanks to our guests for joining us today. And if you'd like to hear, by the way, once again, give out the website one more time.
For the museum.
Yeah.
MDWFP.com/museum.
Fantastic. We got that out there a couple times. We want to make sure people check it out and so forth. Thank you so much for being on. Fanny, it's really good to meet you. Like I said, you look great. You really do. So fantastic. And I love the hat. So I wish I had one like it. So very cool. Thank you for listening. And a special thanks to our guests for joining us today. And if you'd like to hear this or any past episodes, you can subscribe to the podcast or in your favorite podcast app, or on our MPB Public Media app. Now You're Talking is a production of MPB Think Radio, with episode and podcast produced by Lacey Alexander. But Abram, thank you so much for driving the bus today. I appreciate it. Hey, stay tuned for Southern Remedy Healthy and Fit. That's coming up next. And join us again next Monday at 10 a.m. I'm Marshall Ramsey. Y'all have a great week.